All right, welcome everybody. My name is Travis Longcore. I'm the president of Los Angeles Audubon Society and your evening program host. So welcome. This is June 14th, 2023, our regular monthly evening program. Welcome everybody who's joining us from Southern California here mostly, Burbank, Santa Monica, Mission Viejo. Cindy, good to see you, and from Playa del Rey. Um, I wanted to invite you, in case you learned about this meeting someplace other than our mailing list. So, for example, if you found out about Facebook or through any other social media, to welcome you to go to the Los Angeles Audubon Society website and join one of our mailing lists. We have one for these evening programs. We have the Rare Bird Alert that comes out every week, lets you know about noteworthy birds in Los Angeles County. We have our sort of monthly events, which include bird walks, the open wetlands at Ballona Wetlands, which is done in conjunction with our education partner, Nature Nexus Institute, and just a number of lists there that you can sign up for through the website. So just go to laaudubon.org, and down at the bottom there's a link to join the mailing list. There's a little dialogue to do that. The other thing is all of our programs, including our educational programs for with Nature Nexus, are offered to the public for free, and that includes also our bird walks, these evening programs, etc. And so if you like that these programs exist and want to support us, you can also join LA Audubon, become a chapter member by clicking on the link at the upper right, I believe it is, on the website. So we're happy to see, as I said, lots of new names and some familiar ones as well. Arthur, good to see you. For this talk tonight about Mono Lake. This is a topic that is of great interest and has been to the members of LA Audubon for decades. We were quite involved as a chapter financially supporting the lawsuit against the DWP over Mono Lake and getting what ultimately led to the agreement that we're going to hear about more tonight to get water back into it. And that was something that many of the active Audubon members through the up into the early 90s were quite engaged with. So with that, our presentation tonight is from the two members representing the Mono Lake Committee, Bartshé Miller, who's the Eastern Sierra Policy Director at the committee, and in fact, former LA resident, moved up away the same year that I moved here. So just joking earlier, he opened up a spot to let me come and hang out in LA for a while. And also Santiago Escruceria, and he is the the Outdoor Education Center Director for Mono Lake Committee, as well as being president of the board of our sister chapter, Eastern Sierra Audubon Society. So want to especially welcome him as well. And we'll have a presentation for 40 minutes or so between the two, Bartshé and Santiago, and then question and answer. Of course, you can put questions in the chat as we go along. So thank you both for being here. I'm super excited about the presentation tonight and looking forward to learning the current situation.
Thanks, Travis. Thank you for having us. And I want to say that we originally had Nora Livingston, who is going to join us this evening, but she's working on the big bird festival this weekend, the Mono Basin Bird Chautauqua. And we are having Santiago come and pinch hit for her. And Santiago's quite an experienced birder. He's got a lot to show us here in the midst of the program. So I'm gonna start things off, and then midstream I'm gonna turn it over to Santiago, and then he's gonna turn it over back to me, and I'll finish up with a few points. So let's see here. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. we're going to jump into things here. And I want to begin by saying that the Mono Lake Committee that Santiago and I both work for is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a grassroots nonprofit organization. We've been around for 45 years, and we work for the protection and restoration of Mono Lake using education and science as a way to accomplish that. So I'm going to launch into things here. Can everyone see my screen? Travis, maybe if you can just nod. Can you see my screen okay? Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. All right. And as we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the homelands of the Mono Lake Cuisetica, the first people of the Mono Basin, and the tribe continues to live on and speak for the land today. Okay, well, welcome to Mono Lake. For those of you that have not traveled up here, Mono Lake is an alkaline and saline lake in the Eastern Sierra, and it is dotted with volcanic islands, these unusual tufa towers, and is home to a very simple but highly productive ecosystem of algae, brine shrimp, and alkali flies. The lake is also the home to over 1 million migratory birds that take advantage of the flies and the shrimp that live in the lake, especially during the summertime when they're most abundant. California gulls, seen here, they nest at the lake, and it is the largest nesting colony for this species in the state of California, and it's second to Great Salt Lake, which is the largest site in North America, period. So got about 30,000 gulls here and about 100,000 gulls at Great Salt Lake. Mono Lake is one among many lakes in the West that locally in the Great Basin, which are saline and support large numbers of migratory birds along the Pacific Flyway. And you can see in this image there's quite a bit of a linkage going on from these regional lakes. And the migratory paths in North America extend all the way to South America. In fact, because of large numbers of Wilson's phalaropes, among other birds. These lakes in South America are also saline. They often reside in extreme environments and to some degree mirror habitat found up in North America. So these large numbers of phalaropes are what led to a tripartite sister agreement through these three lakes, Laguna Mar Chiquita, that you saw just a moment ago in South America, the dot in the Central South America map, Mono Lake up here in the Eastern Sierra, and Great Salt Lake on the other side of the Great Basin. All three of these lakes together support huge numbers of Wilson's phalaropes. These lakes, these saline lakes, I should say, are home to productive ecosystems, niche habitat, and extreme and dramatic environments, and they've survived past climate and geologic change. Saline lakes provide economic, cultural, and recreational value for people, and it's been a roller coaster year for saline lakes in the Western Hemisphere. Only 6 months ago, Great Salt Lake, shown here, was on the edge of ecological crisis because it had dropped so low. And now, after a record winter in the West, for parts of for both Utah and California, Salt Lake and Mono Lake elevations have come up quite a bit, and they've come back from this spiraling misfortune due to water diversions, a situation that's been exacerbated by multiple years of drought. And in this image, this is from April 1st at Mono Lake. Mono Lake Committee staff met Los Angeles Department of Water and Power staff at the shoreline because the lake level matters for DWP and for California. And we work together to make sure that we agree on the lake level. And they came down in a snowcat, which is a first here at Mono Lake. Usually we can drive down to the lakeshore on April 1st. It's really a testament to the fantastic winter that we've had here in the Eastern Sierra. By the way, I will point out that we did ski. Our staff skied down ahead. So another high point this year has been the conservation roller coaster. I should point out is the designation of Laguna Mar Chiquita, this sister lake, this large saline lake in Argentina, and it's one of the most important sites in the world for Wilson's phalaropes and South American flamingos. This was declared a national park by the Argentine government basically a year ago on June 30th. And having just traveled there last December, I can tell you that it is a great place to visit, a great place to bird, really friendly people. And if you like Malbec, I would say that's a good place to have a glass. Let's see here. So saline lakes in the Western Hemisphere and around the world, I think a lot of people probably understand or have heard that they are facing a range of threats. Most are in some form of decline from all sorts of issues, whether it be water quality issues to climate change. But chief among all of the impacts facing these lakes is water diversions, the impact of water diversions. And I'm going to go through a few painful examples here. Bear with me because it does really bring home the point of why protecting the saline lakes we have left is of the utmost importance. A century of water diversions from the vital tributary streams and rivers that feed all of these lakes, including the ones that were cut off here at the Aral Sea. They have, in some cases, erased fragile ecosystems and also, unfortunately, their connected bird habitats. And this was one of the first great, I would say, ecological crises in the world when this lake dried up quite a number of decades ago, and just for cotton. Another lake nearby, Lake Urmia in Iran. This lake also sadly has been impacted by water diversions that from key, let's say, key rivers that flow into this lake from the north and the south. And during my 27 years here at the Mono Lake Committee, we've had delegations from Iran and Lake Urmia, and also from the Aral Sea, to come to Mono Lake to learn how some of the lessons here could be transported to these places and the challenges there. But sadly, these lakes could not. Maybe someday they could be, but they couldn't implement the same solutions there. We don't even have to travel across the other side of the world. We can go just to the south of us in the Western Hemisphere, go to Lago Pupo in Bolivia. This lake also has suffered, sadly, from water diversions that have made it particularly vulnerable to drought and climate change. And again, it's a similar story. Diversions for agriculture, but also there's quite a bit of mining in the Andes that cuts off the water that flows into this beautiful lake basin, which is a little bit southeast of Lake Titicaca and in central Bolivia. And we do not have to go far, even sadly, from our own neighborhood here in the West. Lake Abert, let's see here, Lake Abert used to host in southeastern Oregon about 100,000 phalaropes during the peak of migration, and also with a total of about 250,000 other shorebirds. And sadly, this is what the state of Lake Abert was last October, flying over it on the way into Reno. And again, water diversions are playing a role here, and this is a very tragic situation because in all probability, this situation could have been avoided if the state of Oregon had stepped in and water had been better managed here. This little reservoir right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but, oops, let's go back here. This reservoir right here is called River's End Reservoir, and there was a dam put in place there many years ago that prevented the water from flowing freely into Lake Ebert. Ecological health and bird habitats are, they're not the only values at stake here. Cultural values, economic values, and human health related to air quality are very much part of the story. And these things are tied to the future of our remaining lakes. The consequences are quite severe when we lose a lake. Owens Lake seen here, if you look at the bottom right, that's what Owens Lake typically looks like. If you look at the bottom left, this is probably closer to what Owens Lake looks like today, simply because there is so much water flowing out of the Eastern Sierra, and quite a bit of it is still making its way into its native, basically, endpoint, which was Owens Lake. But this water is now, most of the water annually is diverted to the city of Los Angeles, coming down the Eastern Sierra. The lake dried up in about 1923, and the city of Los Angeles Department of Water Powers had to spend $2.5 billion to fix the air quality problem at Owens Lake. And if you can see the upper left here, a fairly dramatic example of what used to happen before the dust mitigation project really began to work. But I would say that $2.5 billion, it's far cheaper and better if we can all implement nature-based solutions. Mono Lake, coming back to Mono Lake, it's an example of what can go right in the modern story of saline lakes, but it's also an example of a lot of work that must continue in order to fulfill the promises of the landmark conservation designations and all of the legal victories that have occurred over the years. All these designations here at Mono Lake, they absolutely matter. They do offer a measure of protection, but they ultimately do not protect the lake from drying up. That is, the key to that is all the way south with the city of Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And if you drive 6 hours, you get in your car, if you're in LA and you drive 6 hours north, you can arrive up to Mono Lake, and you can see some of the features that actually divert the water. And blocking my screen a little bit here, but we've got Levining Creek, which is diverted. That's the northernmost diversion point of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. And then water flows through a conduit where it has traditionally been diverted in Walker and Parker Creek, which join it, and then Rush Creek, which come into Grant Lake Reservoir here, is captured behind a dam, and all that water is held back and sent through the Mono Craters Tunnel. It still functions. Water is still diverted. It is not being diverted today, but it will. Diversions will resume in the fall, and that water then goes down and joins the main pipe of, or the two main pipes of the Los Angeles Aqueduct, flowing down past Owens Lake and ultimately down to the tunnel, portal, and cascades that come down along Highway 14, seen here when you're driving north out of the North San Fernando Valley. So I need to real quick cover some impacts from this water diversion over the years. I'd say that beginning in 1941, when the water diversions began in the Mono Basin, Mono Lake started to drop a little bit, but that drop accelerated when the second barrel of the LA Aqueduct came online in 1970, and of course, Mono Lake dried up even faster, more water could be diverted, and by 1980, Mono Lake had lost half of its total volume of water, and it exposed large alkali playas around the lake that used to be submerged. And on windy days, Mono Lake did and still does produce some of the most concentrated PM10 pollution. That's 10 microns or less of dust pollution in the nation, and it's grossly in violation of federal air quality standards. And because the salinity doubled at its low point, or because I should say the volume halved, the salinity doubled as a result, and this greatly impacted the ecosystem. Mono Lake is well adapted to salt. There are no fish in Mono Lake because of the chemistry and the high salinity and the alkalinity, but there is a lot of life in the lake. There's lots of algae, there's brine shrimp and alkali flies, and these organisms are very well adapted to even a fluctuating lake level. But the level that Mono Lake dropped to, where it lost half of its total volume, was something that was artificial and certainly beyond any geologic time frame, and greatly stressed these organisms and decreased productivity, and then this in turn impacted birds. You can see here in this image, the lake has retreated and exposed a land bridge. And this land bridge is basically a conveyance, and even though it was connected in 1980 and hasn't been that connected since, it still acts as the shallow water bridge for coyotes to either swim, wade, or in past history walk all the way out to where gulls used to nest on Nedget Island. The gulls abandoned that, and then they have moved since to the Nedget Islets around here, and most of them today nest at Twain Islet, which is perilously close to the recent low lake level we had last December. And I also must mention that the lake dropping certainly impacted the Mono Lake Quizetica tribe. These are the native people around Mono Lake, and their food source, their tribal values, cultural values, and a lot of the values associated with their legacy are gone with a lower lake. And the goal is to, of course, bring Mono Lake up, but we are far away from that point. So I want to pause here for just a moment. I've covered a lot of information, and I have a couple of graphs ahead just for fair warning. There's a lot of legal history. There's a lot of interesting conservation history involving National Audubon, or California Audubon, many state agencies, other groups and individuals. It's really a thickly layered onion of a story that is absolutely beautiful to tell, but I really want to focus on where we're at today and where we're headed, because that really does matter for the rest of the presentation. So because of the public trust, Mono Lake is fortunately protected by the public trust, and to some degree, as are all waters in California. But the public trust is a balancing act. And in 1994, the State Water Resource Control Board chose a balanced lake level for Mono Lake, which is not where Mono Lake used to be at its pre-diversion level, but it is 20 feet higher, or excuse me, much higher than the 20 feet higher, yeah, than the absolute low lake level in 1980. The lake has not reached that point, and the goal was for the water board was to bring Mono Lake up gradually within about a 20-year time frame to reach that balanced level. And here in this graph, I will try to point things out, but we are at the end of the graph here, April 1st, 2023, or just a couple of months beyond that. We are now 11 feet short of that mandated lake level. The lake has come up, but as you can see from this graph, below the blue dotted line is the public trust lake level. where we are trying to get Mono Lake up to, the lake's not there. It's not saved. It is not protected. It is not in a balanced place that the water board mandated for it. We are quite a ways away. And I will point out up above, you see the dotted line of the lake, and that is to show that that is where Mono Lake would be today if diversions never occurred from the streams in the Mono Basin. So there's quite a bit of artificial reduction in lake. And it was expected, well, let me just back up here. This graph right here shows where the lake is now, and also where it would be if diversions were paused or stopped temporarily in even 2010. And it shows the blue line here below. You can see the lake comes up. We get, it did in 2011, where we had a very wet year, and then we had a long series of drought years in California, brought the lake level low. And then in 2016, we had this wet year and then more drought years. And this year, we are expected to rise again, but we know what's going to happen. We're going to have drought years. The lake's going to go back down. That's what happens in California. And it is getting somewhat more exaggerated due to climate change. But the green lake level above here on the graph shows that without diversions, we can get there. This lake would be just, it would be reaching 6388, 6390. It would be just a couple of feet below its management level. And if we were to get these years of drought following, which are quite likely, then we have this good buffer in place to protect the lake. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to turn it over to Santiago and let him take the floor, because he's got some great bird images, and we do really want to spend some time here looking at birds. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Santiago take over sharing.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Santiago Miguel Escruceria. I've been with the Mono Lake Committee for over 20 years now, working with the Outdoor Education Center. This is a program subsidized by our 16,000 members of the Mono Lake Committee, where we invite and bring mostly low-income community students from LA. And we have had the privilege of working with incredible community leaders in LA, which are helping us today with our issue with, trying to stop export of waters to Los Angeles, and see if we can kind of do what Bartshé was saying a few minutes ago, that stopping export the lake will come up. I've been in this program for many years, and I am very proud of the program, but I'm also very proud of the Mono Lake Committee's 20th anniversary of the Bird Chautauqua. This weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have our 20th annual Bird Chautauqua, and you guys are cordially invited to come and join us. We still have plenty of spaces. So without much ado, I'm going to go to my slideshow. And if you can see me, Travis, would you please nod and let me know if this is working? Because I cannot see you for some reason. Or let me know if you can see it. Okay, great.
We
so
can. You
this
need to
is,
go full screen.
I am in full screen, I think. You cannot see me in full screen?
Not yet.
Huh. This is interesting. Houston,
Maybe it's a little slow. Are other people seeing?
Is anybody seeing me on full screen? Let me try it again.
Now we are, with the map of
now
bird
you are?
migration. Oh, and now we're not.
What about now?
Let
What
me
about
give it
now?
a second. There seems to be a little bit of a delay. I'm still just seeing the map and your slides along the side.
Okay. Can you guys see this photo? I just switched photos to one that shows Mono Lake with a spring. Can you guys see it? Okay, let me exit again And
Oh, now
I
you're
get
at the
out of the
spring.
stop share, and let me start all over again. If they can fix the Apollos with Scotch tape, I can fix this. I mean, with duct tape, I can fix this definitely. Can you see me now?
Perfect.
Excellent. Anyways, thank you. Sorry for the little technological barrier there, but we got it going. So this is beautiful Mono Lake. I am going to talk more about the birds of Mono Lake. Some of you have seen this this map that connects, the Americas, and it's amazing to be able to live in a place like Mono Lake, which is one of those stopovers for migrating birds on their way to South America. By the way, I'm from Colombia, and we get a lot of the migrant birds from North America going through Colombia, including the phalaropes. So anyways, it's an amazing place, Mono Lake, and the diversity. We have about 340 species of birds that come through the Mono Basin every year. About 100 of them depend on the lake directly. I'm pretty sure your numbers down in LA are pretty impressive too, but for us up here in a high desert at 7,000 feet, it's also pretty cool, the number and variety of species that we get up here. California Gulls, again, as Bartshé mentioned earlier, this is Mono Lake used to be the second largest nesting colony of California Gulls in the world, the first one being in Great Salt Lake. However, after the 82 drought and the lake going so low that the population of California Gull has not been able to recover. As a matter of fact, a large number of California Gulls moved to the South Bay in San Francisco Bay, and they are literally wreaking havoc with the ecology of the area. And so anyways, that was one of the unforeseen consequences of lowering Mono Lake, was the relocation of the California Gull. Ear grips, and Great Salt Lake, of course, gets an incredible number of ear grips, about 3.5 million. At Mono Lake, in average, we see about 800,000, which is not a bad number. And if you come to Mono Lake at the end of October, November, you'll see the lake covered completely with these little dark dots. And that's the ear grips stopping here on their way south to the Salton Sea and the Sea of Cortez down in Baja. And I like to think about these birds as the smartest birds we get around here, because they spend our winter in Baja eating fish tacos and drinking morenos. And then Wilson phalaropes. This is an incredible bird, because I also was one of the privileged ones to be able to go to Mar Chiquita and see them down in Mar Chiquita in Argentina. And we get an incredible number of these birds here in Mono Lake. And that's one of the spectacles in Mono Lake in the summertime, to see them flying in unison and turning and going. And incredibly, I mean, I recommend you guys to come up here, even just to see the phalaropes on the lake. It's an amazing spectacle. We get about 15,000 at Mono Lake now. Sometimes the numbers can be a little higher. There has been a decline in the numbers. The count of phalaropes in Mono Lake had restarted. So there is this group called Oikonos doing some research again, trying to restart some work that was done in the 80s, and it's trying to bring back, alive this research on the phalarope. And again, as I say, it was interesting going to Argentina and seeing them, this little bird about this big, flying all the way down there. And this is what it looks like in Mono Lake when we get the large numbers. And this is a trivia question for the group. Can anybody notice the odd bird in the picture? And let me know if you know what's the odd bird in the picture. I put it out on purpose. So if you can go to the chat and let me know, that will be great. And I'll give you a hint. Look in the center up of the picture, and you'll see the odd visitor there. Again, I'm just going to offer you some little photos on the bird in Mono Lake. We got spotted sandpipers. And I don't know if you knew this, but the same thing as the phalaropes, the females are the ones with the bright spots, and the phalaropes, right? The females have the bright colors. On spotted sandpipers is the same thing. The females are the one that select the males. They have multiple nests, and they choose, when to migrate first. Valley green swallows, big migrators too. They go all the way down to South America on the west coast, and see them in Colombia. Loggerhead shrikes. By the way, all the photos are mine, and if not, they belong to a friend's company. So we have the privilege of sharing with you guys these photos. Lazula bunting is an immature male. Pretty soon will have been completely bluish aqua. Greyhound owls. And northern pygmy owl. This guy, interestingly enough, has shown up here in town several times, and we have been able to have this guy actually next door to my house. So that's where I got this picture. Little, I don't know if you guys have seen it. Beautiful little small owl. The ospreys. Interesting little bit of trivia about ospreys. There were no ospreys in Mono Lake like until about 1983. Now we have, 15, 16 pairs nesting in Mono Lake. Bald eagles are local now. You can see them in places like Grand Lake and June Lake and Lundy Lake areas. They nest also up here. Golden eagles, kestrels, northern harriers. Love the shoreline of Mono Lake, searching for little birds to munch. And this is a northern goshawk, and I have an interesting story about this photo. About 2 seconds after I took this photo, and I was far away with a big lens, the female attacked me. And I literally had to put my lens up to stop her from nailing me with her claws. It was just really interesting. She did not like having her picture taken or her chick. Anyways, amazing. This bird also, it was in Mammoth area, was still harassing some people on their bicycles, chasing them, and dogs and everything. Anyways, it was a character. Brown creepers, local birds in the forest up here in Mono Lake, in the Jeffrey Pine Forest. White-headed woodpeckers, northern flickers, bullocks orioles. A good sign that spring is here. They start showing up here in May, and we feed them. We put some oranges, and they come by, and they're really happy. Now they're all nesting, probably the females sitting on eggs and incubating and getting ready to produce the next clutch. Another gorgeous little Audubon yellow rump warbler, a butterbutt, like we call it. Also a local bird, likes to be here all the time. And our western tanager, it's an incredible bird to see. Yellow-headed blackbirds. I don't know why a bird with such beautiful plumage can have such a crazy voice. Have you guys heard them in the wetlands? Oh, it's just an amazing, the call of that bird. Red-winged blackbirds. Cedar waxwings, visitors. They come in several groups here in town in Levine. I've seen them many times. That's where I got this picture. And a rare, but it has becoming, has been showing up the last few years, broad-breasted grosbeak. And this is here in town. This is actually out of the window of my house. And we had another beautiful male this spring. Evening grosbeaks. Sorry, I'm trying to time myself here. Oh, sorry, I don't want to go too fast on that shot. But this is an American dipper feeding the chicks. And Calliope hummingbirds, they're here already. I saw them on my feeder. Beautiful moonrise over Mono Lake. And I want to say my thank you with this little video I took a few years ago of a white-breasted nuthatch feeding out of my hand. And that's it. So an open invitation to come and visit us up here. Mono Lake is an amazing place. You will be in awe throughout the whole time up here visiting. Lots of birds. If you're a birder, bird photography happens up here. We do canoe tours. And we have educational outings like seminars and bird walks. And just want to send you an invitation. Come and visit us. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Santiago. I am going to jump back in here. So, thanks. Great to see the birds alive rather than like this. But this is my slide to transition and ask a few questions here at the end, and hopefully these questions will provoke some questions from you as we wrap things up. So I'm going to ask just these out loud because these are questions we get here in Lee Vining and at Mono Lake all the time. So is Mono Lake saved? It's been a really big winter. The lake's coming up, and I can tell you all, I wish. You know, last year Mono Lake dropped to these perilously low levels. This picture was taken last fall, and when it gets this low, it threatens nesting California gulls, which are nesting just beyond the horizon here, or did earlier in the season when this picture was taken. So the lake will not rise enough after this winter to sustain a series of drought years that will likely follow. And there's a lot of information here, and no need to focus on everything on this slide here, except to point out here's the land bridge, and here's Twain Islet, which today 70% of California gulls nest on. They have nowhere else to go if a coyote gets out there. And this is, at least from the gulls' perspective, why Mono Lake is nowhere near being in this protected place. So what can be done now to make a difference to protect Mono Lake and into the future? And the quick answer is we can suspend, not end, but suspend diversions until the State Water Board holds a hearing to consider revising the diversion criteria for the streams flowing into Mono Lake. And in this way, we can preserve wet year gains when the lake goes up. The goal is to get the lake up as fast as possible and to make it resilient during drought years. We cannot afford to wait or hope, I should say, that we're going to get the sequence of really wet years, 3 or 4 in a row. LA will get its water, Mono Lake will get its water. That is just not realistic in California. So another question, who is in support of raising and protecting Mono Lake besides the Mono Lake Committee? And this is a partial list. Yes, the Mono Lake Committee is in here, and so are many other nonprofits, agencies, organizations, and people from all over California. Lots of people, individuals from Los Angeles came to the Water Board workshop in February. You can actually see this workshop online, and there was 3 hours of public testimony at the end. Among those supporting a higher lake level and emergency action on behalf of Mono Lake, the Mono Lake Connecticut Tribe, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Audubon, and the U.S. Forest Service, and many, many others. Another question is can Los Angeles manage without diversions from Mono Lake until the lake reaches its management level? The quick answer, the easy answer is yes. They've done it before, I might add, for many years when they have been cut off from Mono Basin diversions due to the lake being too low, or for many years before, 4 years before the State Water Board decision. If DWP follows the city's vision to invest in developing local supplies through water recycling, groundwater recharge, turf replacement, direct install programs for low-income communities. There will be plenty of water to offset monobasin diversions. In a year like last year, 1% of the city's water came from the monobasin, and 2 years before that, it was upwards of 3%. So we were talking a very small amount of water here that is easily made up through good planning. And this is an example of good planning. It's a stormwater recapture project that DWP implemented. And they were touting in January that at this point in time during this very wet winter, that they were able to hold back, 32,500 acre feet of water. Like last year, only 4,500 acre feet of water was diverted from the monobasin. So this is an example of good planning where we could actually offset the water that would otherwise be lost from, or that would be lost from the monobasin and raise Mono Lake. This is an example of bad planning. This year, along the LA aqueduct, water is actually being discharged in multiple locations into the desert. And this is understandable on one hand on a year like this because there is so much water. Los Angeles Department of Water and Power can't take it all to Los Angeles. But on the other hand, this happened in 2017 also, and you would have thought after that year that DWP would be moving quickly to find a way to take this water, either transfer it, or bank it to offset other water, notably water that could be used to offset diversions from Mono Lake. If you can imagine this happening in a neighborhood in Southern California, Los Angeles, or anywhere during the drought, even now, you can imagine how people might react to see a lot of water just constantly running off of a property and on its way to the ocean. It's all about planning, and as Audubon California pointed out here so eloquently in their letter to the State Water Resources Control Board this few months back when we had the workshop, resilience to climate change requires planning ahead during wet years, like this year, to ensure adequate water supplies during the more frequent, longer dry years. This is exactly what we're hoping to achieve for Mono Lake to bring it up to its public trust level. Just a couple more questions here. One is, can we really raise Mono Lake in this age of climate change and warming? And the answer is easy yes. The base assumption for many saline lakes is that there's climate change. What can be done? They're kind of all in trouble. We're all in this together. It's too bad. But all of these lakes are impacted due to water diversions, and water diversions have pushed them all to the edge of fragility where they cannot weather extreme droughts and climate change. And we need to put more water, allow more water to flow into these lakes naturally in order to make them resilient to climate change. And we've done the modeling at Mono Lake, so we know what we're talking about in this particular case. We've shown that with diversions continuing like they have been for the last 29 years, that Mono Lake will not reach its management level. It's going to get higher over time, but it's just not going to get to its management level. It's going to stay below. And this is one of the most compelling reasons for pausing diversions and finding solutions that bring Mono Lake up. And if you pause these diversions, and again, we're not talking about forever ending them, we're talking about pausing them to get to the management level and then allowing the rules that are in place for diversions to LA to occur based on the current water board order. But if you pause them now, then the lake can actually get up quickly, maybe within 12 years if we have another year or two like this, and we can keep it there and retain this buffer from a lake rise after wet years. And then my final question is there hope for Mono Lake and other saline lakes? And that's an absolute yes. And a powerful first step to all of this is connecting people, nonprofits, economic interest communities, tribal leaders, and government agencies and scientists together. It's about getting people together who want to take action, building coalitions, making allies, and creating momentum. This is what is happening today between people at Mar Chiquita, Great Salt Lake, and at Mono Lake. And the U.S. Forest Service, Manomet, and others are helping make these conservation connections happen, along with the nonprofits behind them. And there is a growing legacy of connection between Mono Lake, Great Salt Lake, and Mar Chiquita, and it can happen well beyond these three lakes. We grow stronger when we collaborate, when we reach out, when we bring our skills and background to the table at key moments when it matters for these lakes. And as Marcela Castellana from Mar Chiquita, who is a phalarope researcher, said most eloquently, and I quote, "Why do we have such an international focus on our work to protect saline lakes and shorebirds? It's because the shorebirds demand that we work together," unquote. We will need each other to keep this work moving forward and to protect saline lakes around the world. And this is where our story of Mono Lake today ends. As evening descends, long live Mono Lake and long live our sister saline lakes. And thank you all for joining us. And also thank you for those of you who are members of the Mono Lake Committee. That's something you can certainly do, is join the Mono Lake Committee, but you can also take action. And I will leave this up as we take questions, if there are any questions. Thank you very much.
And a big virtual round of applause here. Everybody, there is a little button on the left-hand side of your screen. You can click on it and add your applause virtually. So thank you so much for that presentation. All the birds, we'd love to see that, as well as the context of what's going on in Mono Lake today and what a possibility is for change in the future. So I'll answer the first question in the chat first, which is the presentation being recorded? We are being recorded, and this will be posted on the YouTube channel for LA Audubon, as well as on our Facebook page for anyone who is interested there. So you can either put questions in the chat, or you can just go ahead and unmute and ask. And don't be shy. Ah, yes.
Oh, the mystery bird.
Yes.
Santiago.
It was a savanna sparrow.
I was gonna go towhee, but I couldn't.
It was right above the flock of Wilson's phalaropes.
Great question from Gail. How are the eared grebes doing at Mono Lake?
All yours, Santiago.
Well, the ear grapes are, they were having a hard time because, the decline in places like the Great Salt Lake, Lake Albert, and, and the issues that we have been having here in Mono Lake. So like all birds, visiting saline lakes, they are all in peril if we don't pay attention and do something about it and start becoming active, to trying to protect these unique ecosystems. So they're doing okay, but not perfect, right? The numbers in years past have been higher, and we want to see them higher again.
Steve, you unmuted. Do you want to ask a question? No? Okay, is there hope for the lakes that have mostly dried up throughout the world that aren't doing as well as Mono Lake, like the ones that you mentioned? Thank you, Lori, for that question.
That's a great question. There, it's never too late to put water back into a lake. And I would say that, in this world that we live in the Anthropocene, I would say we still get value from getting water back into these lakes. We may not get everything back. It may take time, but it's absolutely vital if we can get water back into these lakes and share it more efficiently. Because as we've seen at Owens Lake, even though Owens Lake is kind of a shadow of its former self, and it went dry simply by the fact of the dust mitigation irrigation that's going on. Birds are returning to that habitat, even though it's heavily managed habitat, and that still is something. That's better than nothing. So my answer is, yeah, if we can you can bring these lakes back. Maybe not to their full glory, but we can get over time a lot of values out of it.
So our next question is for those of us that live in LA City, what can we do to pressure them to work toward conservation?
Great question. You can absolutely contact if you live in Los Angeles and you are represented by the city council member in the city of Los Angeles. That is a great way to make your voice heard directly to the city. And as we work to try to find a way to pause diversions and get replacement water for the city of Los Angeles, it's really critical that the city leaders are going to play a role in this. And if they hear from all of you, then that is going to make a difference.
So, do you think the most effective route is to contact city council members, or is it to contact the DWP board as, they're like a semi-autonomous, city utility?
The board. I would contact your city council members. Let them
Okay.
know they are going to be hearing from us, and if they've heard from you first, or they're hearing from all of us at the same time, this is a good route to go. And this is probably the most effective way as a resident of the city that you can really make a difference. Another way is to join the Mono Lake Committee, or at least go to our website and take action in the different ways you can. Another way, probably coming up down the road, is commenting to the water board. Comments are closed on the workshop that we had last February, but there likely will be a hearing on the horizon again regarding Mono Lake. So great question. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, just to be clear, so we as a chapter could encourage everyone to specifically contact their individual council members,
Yes.
knowing that you are going to be following up with them directly soon.
Yes. And we
And
have already. Santiago
okay,
met with some of their staff just about a month ago. So
okay,
he's probably going to make another trip down there at some point, and maybe I will, and others on our staff, Jeff, our executive director. So our goal is to reach out to them and talk to all of them and remind them of the importance of Mono Lake, and that we're all working together to
yeah.
get
Let's
this
make sure
lake.
we match up the chapters with the council members so that you can have somebody from, if you're working with the council members in San Fernando Valley, you can get San Fernando Valley Audubon leadership, and we can, figure out who we've got in LA Audubon's territory, et cetera, et cetera. Great. Next question here. Is there information available on the habitat use of birds at Owens Lake?
Santiago, do you want to tackle that one? I can answer it, but I would
Go
think you
ahead.
might have a
Go
better
ahead,
one.
Bartshé. Go ahead.
There is Owens Lake is an important bird area. I will mention, and you can certainly find some information on the Important Bird Area website. There's also a birding festival down at Owens Lake every year in April. and that website would probably have some information. Eastern Sierra Audubon is the local Audubon chapter that covers Owens Lake. So I'm going to kick it to you, Santiago, since you're a board member of Eastern Sierra Audubon.
Great. Well, one of the amazing things that happened with the rewatering to mitigate, those dust storms down in Owens Lake is that inadvertently, I mean, DWP did not plan for this. They created incredible habitat for migratory birds, and the story has been that anything from avocets to California gulls to phalaropes to peeps. I mean, all these birds are showing up again in the Owens Lake. So the information, you can find it on the Eastern Sierra Audubon Society webpage. We have some information on Owens Lake. But there is also a great resource down in Lone Pine. His name is Mike Prather. And if you contact him directly, he can maybe even give you a tour. That guy's a master's on the Owens Lake. And he can give you a tour of the area and show you the really cool spots. Yeah, Mike Prather. Thank you, Travis.
Wonderful.
Nice.
And we also have a few people following along on Facebook. I just want to let you know, if you're watching the broadcast live there, you can toss a question in the chat, the comments there, and we'll bring it on over while we continue. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I think I really appreciate you front-ending the sort of the pessimistic questions. Isn't it doomed? Do we have the water to do it? All those things that you've really worked these out and know that there's a viable path here forward to get the lake up where it needs to be, and where by legal agreement it really should be. And I can say that I'll work with you and LA Audubon will in terms of communicating with our folks to, in our newsletter, et cetera, to talk to the city council members and urge them to go ahead and protect this resource for the benefit of the birds and for the benefit of the people of the future of this state. And we appreciate the work that you're doing, the link between Mono Lake and Los Angeles that's created by this infrastructure has created some really wonderful exchange as well, with you reaching out to communities in Los Angeles and educating people about what's at the other end of the tap when they turn it on. So really thank you for that, and I hope we can continue this conversation. With that, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and we're going to go ahead and stop the share. Thanks everyone on Facebook for attending.